It is a mild spring evening in May 2013. A family is sitting together enjoying a relaxed barbecue. They are laughing, chatting, and sharing news. A young woman finally gets up. She has something else to do. A friend has invited her to a photo shoot, so the young woman says goodbye to her family. The next time we see her, it is in the photos taken of her that evening, and these photos are extremely disturbing. Georgia Williams is 17 years old in 2013 and lives in Shropshire, England. She has a sister named Scarlett, who is 5 years older. The two teenagers live with their parents, Lunette and Steve. Her father is a police officer. Georgia herself is very active. She is the head girl at Urquhart Wood Technology College, a member of the student council, and volunteers at her local football club. She has a steady boyfriend named Matthew, with whom she is very happy. Georgia is currently looking into opportunities to train as a paramedic. She would then like to apply to the Royal Air Force. For now, though, she is working at a local gas station to save up some money. Georgia is very popular, not only at school, but also at work. She gets along with everyone and has a large circle of friends. She also gets along very well with her coworker, Jamie Reynolds. He has invited her over on May 26, 2013. Georgia's family has just had a barbecue with their extended relatives and spent a cozy evening together when she leaves the house again. She leaves at around 7:30 p.m. to meet Jamie. On the way, she sends a few text messages, the last one at around 8 p.m. She also receives a text message from Jamie, who she's on her way to see. He writes, "I'm so excited. Please don't be late." A short time later, Georgia will be dead. Jamie Reynolds is already 23 years old and has asked Georgia for help with a photography project this evening. He is currently working on his portfolio. Jamie wants to become a photographer. Georgia has even encouraged him to pursue this dream, so it makes sense that he asks her for help when he needs a model. Jamie lives just a few streets away, so Georgia gladly agrees. He has a very specific idea for the shoot and needs a model who would be willing to be photographed in a staged hanging scenario. Reynolds has bought a special outfit for the shoot, which Georgia puts on. Georgia and Reynolds have known each other for a while. The two are in constant contact with each other, mainly via social media. Reynolds also makes it very clear that he feels more than just friendship for Georgia. But Georgia, who is 6 years younger, makes it just as clear to him that she has no interest in a romantic relationship with him. She's totally happy with her boyfriend Matthew. She just wants to be friends with Jamie. And actually, it seems like that's okay with him. At least until Georgia doesn't come home on the evening of May 26, 2013. Georgia is not reported missing to the police until 2 days after her disappearance, on May 28th. That's because on the evening of May 26th, her parents receive a text message from Georgia's cell phone. It says that she went out with friends after the photo shoot. She writes that she doesn't know when she'll be home yet. Her parents should go ahead and go to bed. Her parents have no idea that it wasn't Georgia who sent this text message. It was her murderer. When Lunette and Steve Williams notice the next morning that their daughter is still not home, they send another text message. They receive another reply from Georgia's number. She says she decided to stay overnight at a friend's house because it got so late. Her parents shouldn't worry if they can't reach her for a while. Her cell phone battery is almost dead. Georgia has a ticket for a local concert that evening. She often goes to shows and is always reliable. When Georgia doesn't come home on May 27th, her parents assume that she went straight to the concert from her friend's house. But when Georgia doesn't show up on the morning of May 28th, Lunette and Steve become suspicious. They call her friends and ask around, but no one has seen Georgia. When they finally report her missing to the police, all they can say is that Georgia was last seen at Jamie Reynolds' house. So the police check him out first. However, Jamie is now long gone. On May 27th, he drove west in his car with Georgia Williams' body in the trunk. Jamie murdered her during the photo shoot the day before. But on May 27th, no one who encounters him notices anything unusual. He goes to a movie theater in Wrexham that day, completely relaxed. There, he watches the latest Fast and Furious movie. On May 17th, he had invited Georgia to see the movie with him. She had declined. Now he watches the movie alone, while her body lies in his car parked outside the cinema. He then hides Georgia's body in a wooded area near Wrexham. Shortly before he arrives there, his car breaks down. The car is stuck in the mud. A few passers-by help him out of his predicament and get the car moving again. A woman takes photos of her father pushing the car out of the mud. Shortly afterwards, she discovers a search notice for exactly this car after a search is launched in connection with the missing Georgia Williams. It is thanks in part to this clue that Jamie Reynolds is quickly tracked down. He continues on to Glasgow. There, on May 28th, he calmly shops at H&M. He then goes back to the cinema to watch The Hangover Part 3. At 7 p.m., he checks into the Premier Inn Hotel in Glasgow, where he is picked up by the police. His car made him easy to find for the police. Investigators question him about the disappearance of Georgia Williams. Jamie claims not to know where she is. On May 29th, Reynolds' apartment in Wellington is searched. Reynolds is now considered a murder suspect, although he claims to know nothing about Georgia's disappearance. 2 days later, 5 days after Georgia's disappearance, certainty finally arrives. Her body is found naked and buried in the northwest, in a wooded area near Nantagarth Pass in Rhythm. Georgia's father is a police officer himself. His own colleagues have to inform him that his daughter has been found murdered. The Williams set off for the site where she was found to lay flowers for their daughter. The two find a little comfort in the peaceful surroundings of the wooded area where Georgia was found. Her mother said in an interview, "I had nightmares about those woods, imagining them dark and scary and swarming with insects. In the end, I was relieved that we were there. It was a warm, sunny day, and it was the kind of place Georgia would have gone camping with her friends." On the same day, the suspicion of murder officially becomes a charge. This is because pictures of Georgia's body are found on one of Reynolds' SD cards. The pictures document her death. During his photo shoot, Reynolds not only wanted to reenact the hanging of a person, he actually did it. The photos show Georgia with a rope around her neck, before, during, and after her death. While Reynolds could have intervened, he not only watched Georgia die by strangulation, but also photographed his crime. Forensic examinations revealed that he abused her body after her death. Later, police officers determined that Georgia's death could have been prevented. Her killer, Jamie Reynolds, was apparently a ticking time bomb. On June 14th, 2013, Georgia Williams is buried in Telford. The day before, her parents mark the route to the funeral service along the streets with orange and turquoise ribbons. These were Georgia's favorite colors. The turnout for the funeral is so large that the entire main road in Telford is brought to a standstill. Lunette and Steve Williams are doing their best to organize the funeral because they know they will never be able to hold another celebration for Georgia. No birthdays, no graduation, and no wedding. So they put all their heart and soul into saying goodbye to their 17-year-old daughter. Meanwhile, the charges against Jamie Reynolds are becoming more and more concrete. At the time of his arrest, Jamie's hard drive contained more than 16,000 hardcore photos and more than 70 video files. Jamie's parents are said to have known about his consumption. According to these, Jamie is said to have started consuming this material at the age of about 14. His parents tried to stop him by blocking the relevant websites. Jamie then set up his own Wi-Fi network as a teenager. This allowed him to bypass his parents' blocks and continue viewing and downloading violent films and photo files unnoticed. Several other disturbing records were found on Jamie, including more than 40 stories he had written. One is titled Georgia's Surprise. It contains explicit murder fantasies about Georgia that resemble the actual crime in every detail. In court, the story was described as a script for the actual murder. Jamie Reynolds is not a blank slate. Back in 2008, when he was 17, he attacked a girl of the same age. He had also lured the girl, whose name is unknown, to his home. There, he tried to strangle her. Fortunately, the girl fought back courageously. She broke one of his ribs and bit him. This allowed her to escape and survive the attack unharmed. The girl reported the attack at the time. However, there were no consequences for Reynolds. When he told the police about his mental health problems and depression during questioning in 2008, they turned a blind eye. Although he had tried to take another person's life, Reynolds got away with a warning. 2 weeks later, Reynolds' own stepfather contacted the police. He had found disturbing pictures in the boy's room, photos of women with nooses around their necks. In connection with the attempted murder just 2 weeks earlier, this was naturally alarming. But once again, there were no consequences. In August 2011, he harassed a girl. When she rejected him, he rammed her car with his vehicle. In February 2013, he locked a girl in his home until she screamed. The victims in the last 2 incidents have something in common with Georgia. They all have red hair. This is said to have been a central part of Reynolds' fantasy. The fact that Reynolds was never prosecuted for his previous crimes caused great consternation after Georgia's murder, especially among her parents. They say, Reynolds was a budding murderer. If some people had just done their job properly, our daughter would still be alive. The chief constable of the police department responsible also admits this mistake. He acknowledges that the prosecution is partly to blame for Georgia's death. However, this came 3 years after Georgia's murder and only after legal pressure from Georgia's family. One thing is certain. If the warning signs from Jamie Reynolds had been taken more seriously and recognized in time, things would have turned out differently. And perhaps Georgia Williams would still be alive. Ultimately, Jamie Reynolds confessed to the murder of Georgia Williams. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. The court considered him to be a high risk of reoffending, and even that he had the potential to become a serial killer. Among other things, this is due to his previous crimes, his excessive consumption of relevant media, and the stories he wrote himself. For Georgia Williams's family, this is the best possible scenario, but it is still no real consolation, because the realization of how dangerous Reynolds really is came too late for the 17-year-old. Georgia's sister Scarlett has since become a mother. Her son will never get to know his aunt. Georgia and Scarlett's mother, Lunette Williams, has since written a book about her daughter's murder. She describes how the family is trying to cope with the painful loss and help each other through dark times. Georgia's father had to give up his job as a police officer because the crime against his daughter was simply too much for him to bear. He says, "They say time heals, but that's not true. You just get used to living with the pain. I can endure physical pain, but I've never experienced emotional pain like this before. It's torture, years of torture." Her family established the Georgia Williams Trust in her name. It funds sports, music, and outdoor adventures for young people in the name of the murdered girl. Her mother, Lunette, says, "I like to distribute the money. It's like Georgia is distributing it and saying, have fun, do something with it." And that brings us to the end of today's video. What do you think about today's case? Could the crime have been prevented? Feel free to write your thoughts in the comments. By the way, this also helps support the channel, just like a like or a subscription. Other than that, there's not much else to say. Thank you for watching and for your support, and have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching this video. I hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, bye everyone.